Welcome to Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. You are going to hear the stories from the eclectic life of a guy who is a professional counselor, a family man, a SWAT team chaplain, outdoor enthusiast, a guy involved with ropes, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, a chaotic Jedi, and who is a recipient of an honorary doctorate from the University of Adversity. Using these stories, we take the facts lead to concepts, and from the concepts we make a variety of life applications. Just a caveat about the facts. Most of the time we will tell you the facts just the way it happened, but once in a while we'll give you the facts the way other people remember how it happened, and that usually includes a tablespoon of embellishment. No harm is meant, just good, clean fun for educational purposes. Please subscribe and share this with your friends or your enemies. It might help them to be better people if they listen. As always, we thank you for keeping up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-through window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. In the movie The Guardian, Kevin Costner plays a fictional character named Ben Randall. Ben Randall is a rescue swimmer, and his character is talking to the character played by Ashton Kutcher, a kid named Jake Fisher, and they're discussing Ben Randall's legendary career as a rescue swimmer. They're standing in the locker room, and Jake Fisher, this young trainee, is pushing Ben Randall and finally says, "What's the real number? What's the real number?" And he looks at him and says, "The real number's 22. Jake is shocked, and he goes, 22? That's not bad, but it's not 200. And then Ben interrupts and says, 22 is the number of people I lost. It's the only number I kept track of. I was sitting in a room full of men, and it may have been one of the most forlorn things I've ever heard in my life. It was spoken absently, and the speaker unconsciously raised his leg. He was wearing camouflage pants and boots, and he unconsciously raised his leg and he stared at his foot. And absently he said, "And we still had his blood on our boots." And that had been years ago, probably 6 years or more. All the men in the room had all been present for a standoff and the ensuing gunfight that resulted in the killing of a canine dog and the wounding and disabling of a police officer and the death of the perpetrator. When it happened, I had not been with the team or even a chaplain at the time. I had been inserted into the aftermath and had visited the intensive care unit as a 23-year-old minister. Years later, I would be assigned to this team as their chaplain. And as we ran and as we trained and as we worked out and as we ate meals together, I would hear pieces of the story. Now, I knew the story from my perspective as a shiny little minister sitting in an ICU unit with friends and family, but I didn't know their side of that story. Finally, on a cold, rainy night, we were uncharacteristically not out in the elements training. We were sitting in our field office, a little makeshift single wide trailer at the end of an old airport runway. We were sitting inside, all of us in the same room, and I had been with them long enough. And I felt like I could ask this question, but I said, "Hey, can you guys tell me what happened at the kettle?" I had heard it from different men with different perspectives, but had never seen the whole picture. I'd never seen it play out in sequence. And there were gaps. There were gaps in my understanding. And this night, I would learn that there were gaps between the men who had lived it. At the time, I was not trained in critical incident stress management, and I wasn't trying to do that. I just wanted to hear the whole thing. I just wanted to fill in the things that I didn't understand what had happened. One of the men got up and he drew the building's floor plan on a whiteboard, and he started the story from his perspective. This is where I was standing. This is what I saw. This is what I felt. This is what I heard. This is what I did. And one by one, each man who had been there did exactly the same thing. And to my knowledge, it was the first time the whole team had talked about the whole thing as a team. And not where they did an after-action report or debriefing, and not even a diffusing, but this was the first time they just sat and talked about it as a team. Now, they talked about it with each other and as individuals, but this was simply a remembering. Now, this type of discussion is not what Ellipse recommends in their diffusing techniques, and it doesn't comply with what the Mitchell model says you should do. It was just the telling of a story with more than one narrator and more than one perspective, and nobody was doing a debriefing, telling people what they could, would, or should feel afterwards. This was just men talking. That may be why we have 4 Gospels. You have 4 men telling the story of Jesus, and 3 of them were observers at some point, and one of them is a historian, and they leave things out and they put things in. It doesn't mean they didn't happen. It just means sometimes they focused on things that the others didn't. At the end, after everybody took their turn and told their story, the room was silent. And Mickey looked down at the floor, and he started to raise his foot. And he said, "And they put us in a room, and they didn't let us go home for hours. And we still had his blood on our boots." Years later, I would be in another room, and I would stand beside another marker board, and then I would watch men draw and place X's or O's where they were and talk and explain where they were and what they did and what they saw, as another incident played out where one of their brothers was gunned down. In the days that followed that tragedy, a young man would pull me aside and say, I've still got some of his clothes in my car, and they have blood on them. And I don't know what to do with them. I took them, and in a very private moment that no one ever witnessed but God, I buried the clothes with the blood on them underneath a maple tree. It's these very private and almost secret moments that come back to me when I'm faced with a tragedy or a loss. It's a number nobody counts. It's the things no one ever says in public. It's the things you typically don't tell your spouse. But you hold that one thought, that one memory, that instant frozen in time that encapsulates or represents the whole. And that means the whole thing or the hole in your soul. And years later, when you're caught off guard or you're remembering it, you look out of your eyes and you see the past and you clench your fist and you lift your foot and you look at your boot and you see blood that's not there. The blood on the boots, the blood on the clothes, the blood in the floor. We look at those moments and deep in our hearts, the kind of hearts that sort of separate us from other people, the hearts that make us who we are, the type of men we strive to be. In those moments, in those hearts, there's this belief that we don't share with anybody, but we have in common with everyone. We remember the blood on our boots and the blood on the pants, and we believe in secret, in the secret chambers of our heart, that there's actually blood on our hands. That somehow this is my fault. It's not just limited to the times when people get killed and we feel like somehow it's our fault. It's the blood on our hands when we see people make irrational choices. They act in desperation. They fail. They fall. They quit. They lose their job. They lose their spouse, or they just continue to be lost. We look at what happened, and we see blood on our hands. And I'm not sure that I can explain it in one word. I don't think one word would ever do it justice: guilt, shame, fear, failure, impotence, anger, just the gaping open question of what could I have done different so that things would just be different. And we accept responsibility and we live with self-recrimination. And yet we're the only ones who uttered a silent accusation, and the accused is ourselves. We don't talk about it in those terms or admit it for fear that if we say it out loud, it will be true. That somehow we are to blame and that we do indeed have the blood on our hands. I'm not one of those men. I'm not a warrior. I'm not an operator. I'm not a soldier. But I know how you have to be wired in order to be able to blame yourself when somebody else gets injured or died, especially when they're in a business where at any time any one of them can be harmed. And I understand this wiring, and it's not because I'm one of them, but simply because I'm a guardian in some way myself. I am a brother, an uncle, a son, a father, a grandfather, a friend, a spouse, a minister, a counselor. I have people I care for and have made myself responsible to. It's a different business than the business the real guardians are in. But I too blame myself, and often. And if not blame, at least keep count of the 22 you lost. If not blame, at least question, is it my fault? You see, I ask, is it my fault when I can't prevent a marriage from ending, when someone doesn't succeed in recovery, if someone relapses, when I can't make someone put a life together that is falling apart, when I can't make a student or a young person see that he or she is not doing well and failing in spite of the protest and the protection of others, we blame ourselves. And we see the blood. And if we see the blood anywhere, in that deep, dark, secret place of our hearts, we see it on our hands. The trainers at the police academy will ask in the aftermath of these things if they trained them well enough. A field training officer sitting by himself when he doesn't have a rookie with him will ask, did I miss something? Did I send them out by themselves unprepared? The partner that was on the call will ask, what did I miss? The person who survived the gunfire or the accident will ask, why are we alive and they're not? And does that make me guilty? Even the little dispatchers will ask, why did I send them to that call? And it's not just exclusive to police or first responders. This is common ground for all the guardians and all those who care. Parents wonder, did they do or didn't do? What did we miss? Ministers, therapists, friends, mentors, and spouses, all of us who guard other hearts and lives and souls, we ask the same kind of questions. And although in many instances there's not any actually blood spilt, the blood is a metaphor for guilt. It's a representative of a blame or fault. And those who see life the way we see it, we accept responsibility for when really we just have a responsibility to. We see other people's fail and we look for the blood. And more often than not, we see it on our own hands. The cruel part of this is that often and quite often we have and do make a difference. We change lives, we shape lives, we influence lives, we save lives. People tell us, well, you made a difference. And when we don't or we can't make a difference, we blame ourselves. And we keep a running total, not of the successes, but of the failures. We only count the 22. The truth. The hard, cold, unalterable truth is to admit utter powerlessness. To men with hearts like this, powerlessness is worse than failure. If I fail, at least I can blame someone, even blame myself. I can rage against what I should have done or shouldn't have done, and I can quantify it. Failure means I can blame someone, even myself, and I rage against it, where powerlessness just means I have to live with the blood on my boots, the blood on the clothes, and try to convince myself that just because I couldn't help it this time, and just because this time I was powerless, doesn't actually mean I have blood on my hands. We can resolve to be more attentive, but that almost hints at that we were not attentive enough, and there's the blood again. We can resolve to call more, but that intimates that we should have called at least once more, and there's the blood again. We can resolve not to let it happen again, but somehow that insinuates that in some way, in some shape, I let this happen, and there's the blood again. It's not that I did not do more or different, but I could not do more or different. And to admit that despite my best effort, what I did not make a difference. I need to say this out loud. I need to hear this. And I need you to hear this, and I need you probably to say it out loud. I can only do what I can do. I cannot do what I cannot do. And I can't make someone accept the help that is offered if they don't want it, won't accept it, or can't at that critical moment when they are in crisis see that they need it. Now, that doesn't ease the pain. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't alter the course of events. It doesn't fill the hole created by grief, loss, and tragedy. But that confessional, admitting that we did do what we could do, that we could not do that which we could not do, and the fact that for all of our care, for all of our love, for all of our concern, for all of our protection, for all of our loyalty, we could not alter the course of events. And that does not make us guilty, negligent, unloyal, unloving, unworthy. It is merely to accept that we were not in control. And oftentimes when we feel like we are out of control, we feel powerless. And because we are men of power, we feel guilty. It feels this bad, whether we are to blame or not. And feeling bad doesn't mean we are to blame. As bad as it does feel, and as bad as it feels, and even though we feel as if there should be, there really isn't any blood on our hands. We are forced to admit that in spite of all that we tried, we were not in control. And that's just hard to accept for guardians. It's hard to admit. Not having power does not mean we are at fault. It just simply means we are human. That awful feeling that accompanies our feeling of failure, the fear that we failed or our perceived inadequacies, that is proof that we care. Now, the fact that we care doesn't change or fix anything. Caring is not omnipotent, but neither is it impotent. It is not all powerful, and at the same time, it is not without power. Caring is limited, and it's just not always enough. If we did not take some course of action, if we did not speak, we did not do, we did not try because we did not care, then perhaps there is blood on our hands. Yet in many situations, all we can do, the only thing we can do, and the most powerful thing we can do is offer our care. If someone at the moment of crisis in the long cascade into tragedy does not respond to our care, it is heartbreaking. And it does become a thing of nightmare and anguish. But in the end, because we cared, it doesn't change the outcome. That's hard to live with. And because we care, we think that makes us somehow culpable. We think it makes us guilty. And our caring does not remove the blood from boots or pants or gloves or the floor. And please listen very carefully. It does not remove the blood from our hands. It doesn't remove the blood from our hands because it was never on our hands. Caring makes us want to see the blood on our hands. But caring is my part of the deal. And caring, but being inadequate, doesn't make me guilty. Caring and being powerless doesn't make us guilty. You see, when we recognize that the outcome was never in our hands, then we have to accept that the blood can't be on our hands. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3Ws and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.